Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Welcome to the JATE Writers Studio. This is from MNT-EC, the Micro Nanotechnology Education Center, and JATE, the Journal of Advanced Technological Education. In each one of these sessions, we're going to have a guided conversation with a published author, and we highlight authors who publish in peer-reviewed journals, just like JATE. We want our authors to be able to share their stories and their writing process with you, and we want to give authors a voice to share their tips and tricks about how they write for peer-reviewed journals. Today, I'm pleased to introduce Colin Dees. Colin is a PhD candidate at Clemson University in the Department of Construction, Development, and Planning. Today, we'll discuss Colin's article, which is titled "A Data-Driven Flight Proficiency Benchmark for Small Unmanned Aircraft System Curriculum at Two-Year Institutions of Higher Education." Colin, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Peter.
So Colin, before we talk about your writing and your JATE article, I'd like to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, describe where you live and work, and a little bit about your background.
Fantastic. Yeah. Like you said, my name is Colin Dees, and I am a PhD student at Clemson University in South Carolina. I attend the NERI Department of Construction, Development, and Planning, which is underneath the School of Architecture. And at Clemson University. So I'm a PhD student in the year 2.5. I say 2.5, right? So I'm getting close to being finished with my dissertation, and yeah, just honored to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for coming today, Colin, and sharing with us how you wrote this journal article. So can you tell me a little bit about your writing background? How did you learn how to write for peer-reviewed journals?
I think that this all began when I started my PhD journey at Clemson. Prior to that, not much writing experience at all. And so this particular, the JATE journal was my third publication since I've started writing. And really, through the process of getting my PhD, like I said, three major publications, came from, most of my dissertation that I'm doing, which is in drone technology, as you can read through the article. And so a lot of that journey has been around just discovery and writing and just kind of continuing on that journey toward that final dissertation. It's been a good journey, and that's really the history of my writing.
Colin, you mentioned that an idea for the article came from you writing up your dissertation. So how did you decide about pulling things out of your dissertation for three different articles? And what sort of things did you have in your dissertation that allowed you to do that?
Mhm. Well, these articles are kind of feeding into that final dissertation, if you will. So a lot of the research and the background that will eventually feed into that dissertation is coming from this particular paper. So it seeks to do research around what type of evaluation, proficiency evaluations are being done with drone technology. It's a growing field, and um, there's not a lot of published proficiency research for helping pilots and helping, like in this case, technical educators to build curriculums around drone technology and flight and proficiency, and helping these students and upcoming pilots to be able to hone in their skills for flying drones.
So, Colin, I've heard a little bit about the background and why you decided to write this journal article. You've got a co-author, Joseph Burgett, on this article. How did you find co-authors, and how did you kind of divide the work up? What did you do, and what did your co-authors do?
I think that Joe Burgett is the co-author on this particular paper. Joe Burgett is my advisor in the PhD program. So, Joe it means he's very inspirational to me. He's helped me. You asked me like how far I've been back and how I got to writing. A lot of that, I give a lot of credit to Joe. And that you're going to probably ask me something about my writing style, or how did I start writing? I think you already asked me that, but I give a lot of credit to Joe, and he's kind of helped me with understanding how to write, understanding my own writing style, helping me with, just the peer review process. And so he is the co-author on my paper, and just naturally, because he's my advisor, but he's also kind of pushing me to do a lot of the work myself, but he still contributes, and this is his research area as well. So, we have a good working relationship back and forth. And, that's kind of the background of where this particular, where my co-author came from. Is my advisor, and somebody that's very near and dear to my heart.
So Colin, it sort of sounds like this article was constructed in sort of that mentor-mentee model, where you acted as the mentee and then Joseph Burgett acted as the mentor. And so you did a lot of the writing, but the mentor helped guide you along and did some of the review before submission. Does that describe it correctly?
Yeah, Peter, I think it does. I think that it describes it very well.
So, Colin, once you decided that you wanted to write this paper, what did you do first? What was the very first thing you did once you were like, I'm gonna write this paper?
I think that most people might even say, we start with an outline, and we start with some structure, because it is a big project. I mean, this particular paper took me almost a year. So I think, having an outline and having something to get started, having a template of such, and, laying out action items, things that need to happen in some type of sequence, just having some organizational type of structure, I think is a good place for anybody to start. I think that's how I started it. Mm-hmm.
So, starting out with an outline or a framework that you can then fill in later was a way that you started this article. Now, Colin, sometimes writers feel like that they don't have enough data, or they don't have enough participants, or they don't have enough experience, or they haven't been at school long enough, or they don't have enough time. How did you know that you had enough to start writing this article and that you didn't need to wait?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, um, first of all, the research topic is, has a lot of there's a lot of stuff, right? So, there's a lot going on in the drone industry. So that's one good thing we had going for us, right? There's a lot of activities, whether it be from a government perspective or local, just your everyday somebody trying to fly a drone around, and all the new things that are coming up. So there's a lot of new there, um, and a lot of information to go grab. But what we also did, and no matter if you're writing or you're doing research or whatever, I think that just the networking part of this that happened with me early on, and us working with other like nonprofit organizations, other universities, state departments of transportation, just networking with these different groups helped us find the participants that would really feed this particular article. People came to soccer fields and flew drones, and we captured data, and they were interested in it, so that helped a lot, and a lot of them wanted to know, well, how did I do? How did I do? What can I do to show my company or my department, that I'm progressing in this field? And I think this particular research, played a big part in that. I think they really appreciated that. But it came from networking, and just finding people that were interested in what we were doing. And I would say that would be the same for anybody.
So, Colin, we've talked a little bit about the motivation and your relationship with your mentor and how you got started. Once you had this framework of these are going to be the parts of the article, what did you do next? Do you write those all in order, starting with the abstract and the introduction and then the methods? Do you do things out of order? Did you make sure that you had your data and your diagrams filled in first? What was kind of like your order of writing after you had that initial outline or framework created?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of your question I think you already answered, and something I wanted to mention was that outline too, and that my writing style, I had to learn what type of person I am when it comes to writing, and I didn't know that person before I started this journey. Um, so, and I had this weird place that I landed in that I didn't like doing that outline because for some reason I didn't feel like I was contributing to the final product. And I found that just really weird of myself that I really wanted to start the paper and yeah, kind of build a template, which was really the outline into the paper. So that and I had this just it helped me feel like when I'm writing into the paper, it's the final product. And I know I'm contributing directly to the final product. So it's kind of like working the outline into the paper, maybe but I'm always moving things around and maybe changing a few things but I feel like really getting started was writing in what my objectives were. What are the questions that I'm trying to answer here? And I had help because my mentor would always keep me focused on what I was trying to accomplish, and that's going to play a big part in my writing for the future. I'll probably never forget a lot of those things that he's telling me and he's sitting on my shoulder saying, okay, what are you trying to accomplish here? Stay on track. What was the research question? What was the original thing you were trying to do? Because you might be drifting off a little bit here. But I do think that a good place to start is there, but also the literature review would be a big part of what contributes to this paper, and it's a good place to start, right? Go find information that is relevant to what you're studying, and I feel like spending a lot of time in that literature review kind of helps to that. I feel like that would always be kind of the foundation of the paper,
Yeah, so Colin, you mentioned something interesting there about having your major research question sort of being the guiding light or the guiding force behind how you construct the rest of that paper, making sure you have that objective in the back of your mind. And then you also have got that structure that you said with your outline. At the end, you were talking about references. How did you find the references to include in your paper? If you're starting from nothing and this was your first publication, how would you start looking up those references?
That's a good question. I think that, you know, first of all, we have at Clemson, we have a library. And so even through my PhD, our professors would kind of not make us, but really push us to have a relationship with the librarian. And at first, honestly, you want to know the truth about it? I was kind of like, do people really use libraries anymore? How much do they really use those? And wow, was I blown away and surprised at how awesome some of these media, centers are. And we at Clemson have a great one, but hopefully everybody has some access to somebody that can help them find material, find the literature that they need. Obviously I'm going to use Google Scholar, which is if for those that might not know what Google Scholar is it's kind of an academic way of your everyday Google search, right? But it really, it helps to make sure that what you're searching for in those results are peer-reviewed articles and that you can cite and reference in your paper. And then there again, I have to give credit to my mentor once again. It's like, just kind of keeping me on track, telling me sometimes where to go look if I don't know if I'm stuck and getting me unstuck.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
Clemson has an online library as well, so we can search and use that online library as well as maybe meeting with the librarian too.
So Colin, you bring up a good point of being able to bring in a whole bunch of other resources. There are people to help with this writing and research process, just like you talked about with the library. So imagine now that you've constructed your whole article and that your mentors reviewed it and maybe given you feedback about things that you need to change. What was the manuscript submission like? Do you remember what you needed to upload or what it felt like when you uploaded the article?
I do. I'm going to maybe take a one slight step back in that
Hmm.
this may be just advice for other writers that may be just getting started, or maybe they never had a mentor like that really help coach them through this process. But you put a lot into writing these articles. I mean, it takes, like I said, this particular article took a pretty good time, a pretty good while to write. And when you get something back from your mentor, or when you get something back from an editor, if somebody hasn't maybe prepared you for what that's like, sometimes it can be tough. It can be difficult because your soul sometimes is what's writing these articles, and a lot of your time. And I have kids, and I also have a career, so it's you want it to be great. You hope it's going to be good, and and just having somebody tell you that that's part of the process. It's the way it's supposed to be. Helped me out a lot. Matter of fact, I remember a specific situation where I got the paperback and I was just like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Really? I mean, the whole thing was just red. And I remember, picking up the phone and was talking with a meeting with my advisor, and he said, "Are you okay?" And I thought, you know, I am now, just because you asked me that.
Hmm. Well, so Colin, then let's talk about what the peer review process was like. You'd received all this feedback from your mentor. What did reading the reviews from the reviewers make you feel? And what did you do once you received those reviews?
Yeah, and I think that by this point, especially with this particular article, I think I was somewhat ready for that. I think I was prepared, and I would tell people to be prepared for that and just know that that's part of the process. And in this particular case, I thought there was a couple of pretty difficult comments that came back that I had to run over and ask my mentor, and I think even one other person, what do you think about this? And these are just people I have that can help me around the university. But here's kind of the what came back. What do you suggest? I wish I could remember a couple of them. I should have gone back and looked, Peter, but I think just having somebody to lean on, once again, expecting it, first of all, and knowing that this is just part of the process. But if you do get stuck on something, you do get a pretty tough question coming back from somebody that's critiquing the paper. Seek help if you need it. But I mean, the overall submission program process was pretty simple. I thought it was great. You do got to do some digging, because there's not just this particular article, but if you're publishing in other journals, there's requirements, and you got to really sit down and read through them and understand the format, understand, and so Jade actually had a really good template to help, and to kind of put your paper into, and that was very, very helpful. But you do need to really sit down and read those requirements for that particular journal to make sure that that you've got it in the right format and so forth. Oh, I remember, I think there was something that said that a table wasn't wasn't allowed, maybe in the results section or something like that. And I had missed it. I had a table or a figure or something in that particular section, and I had skipped over it. But in hindsight, it's just really reading through that and trying not to miss some of that stuff makes it a lot easier.
Well, Colin, congratulations on publishing your article. So now that you're an experienced author, what advice would you give to new writers who are starting out on their first peer-reviewed journal article, or things from your mentor that you could share that could help other writers?
That's a great question. I think, especially maybe if you're a new writer, find your style, find out what, what in your personality helps you write. Because I learned that about myself through these past 2.5 years, what type of writer I am. And I did not know who that person was before, that's for sure. And I've got kids that are running around and they want to see daddy, and they want to knock on the door, and different distractions from time to time. But I would sit down sometimes, and I might spend a couple of hours on a paragraph. And then there might be other times where I sit down and I don't know how to explain it. It just flows. And I'll walk up and I'll walk out and be like, I'll tell my wife, I was like, man, that was great. It's like a good workout is what I would relate it to. It's like, I did it today. So, and then I would just try to find that moment again. I would keep trying to find, like, what did I do that day? What helped me really focus? Was it, the particular room I was in, like where I was, like, did I work out that day? Was there another positive affirmation in my life that just really helped me focus that day and sit down and write? And I think that's helped me too. Finding ways to get unstuck, using a mentor, using somebody. I just don't know where to go from here, and I've told my mentor, I tell him, I said, I just need you to get me unstuck. Just kick my butt a little bit. Tell me to get in gear. If that's it, maybe I'm just being a little lazy that day, and just push me and help me keep moving. And I would recommend that as well, with a loved one, a mentor, whatever the case may be. But we don't do this alone, that's for sure.
Well, Colin, thanks so much for talking about your article, about your writing process, and really bringing this idea of like personal growth and professional growth into part of the writing process. Because you really helped me understand that it's as much about you as a person than it is about the stuff that's on the page to make a successful publication. So I'd like to open it up to anybody else if they've got any questions for Colin. Billy, Ruth, Elena, or Janet, do you have any questions for Colin about his article in JATE or about his writing process?
I don't really have a question. I mean, it's kind of a question. You talked about needing to find your writing style, and that's one of the things that I struggle with, right? Like, I can write an annual report for NSF, not a problem, because they give us a very structured guideline. How did you go about finding your writing style?
That is a very personal question. It's I think it was seeing those moments where I would just sit there, Billy, and I just couldn't get anything done. I just felt like I was spinning my wheels. And then having those other moments where it would just pour out of me, and I would just walk back and be like, that was awesome. And I think that, remember what I talked to about, like, how to build the outline into the paper? If you heard that part, that was just a little bit of motivation for me personally. Like, if I don't know why I feel that way, I'll probably never be able to explain the fact that, why don't you just do the outline in another paper? I mean, that's the way everybody else does it, right? Just do it, right? But for some reason, I didn't like it, and I felt like I wasn't contributing to the final product. So I was like, well, I'm going to come up with a way that helps me build the outline into the final paper, just so I have something, a little bit of a motivation that day, you know? And something little like that went a long way with me. And so, I think that, clearing my plate helps a lot. Some people might say, well, Colin's a little OCD. So, I'm on my 11th university at this point. So I've gotten pretty good at studying. So part of what helps me is to have a clean slate. I have to have a clean slate. If my life is cluttered, if my room is cluttered, if my house is cluttered, if my career is a little cluttered at the time, sometimes that's a block for me. And I find that just cleaning up the room clears my mind. And then that's just little things like that. It may be me working out, anything like that I can do to just kind of clear my mind, helps things to flow out. And then having the resources behind me, having the resources, having somebody to reach out to, just even if it's to like help you find a resource or a publication or something that might help you. But at the same time, just somebody to kick your butt and say, hey, you're just being lazy. You need to get going.
Right.
Well, Colin, from the chat, there's a question about demands on your time, and we've heard this from a lot of community college and technical college educators that they just don't have enough time to be able to write for peer-reviewed journal. How did you manage your time to accomplish writing this article with kids and working on your PhD and jobs and family? How did you fit it all in?
So, I appreciate that because, I'm a business owner. I have two beautiful young girls. Um, my life is full, and I'm trying to finish this PhD. And in the process, um, all those little things in life are very, very important. And being able to balance my time, I can appreciate anybody saying that. And I don't know that there's a perfect way, but I would say that sometimes at night when things get a little quiet, sometimes that's a happy place for me. Because I do own my own business, I do have a little more flexibility. But if not, maybe you had some, a break at lunch where you could go find a place to just kind of clear your mind and close the door and close the shutters, and find those little moments, even if it's an hour here or there. And if you can find your own writing style and then use that hour very productively, right? Because as busy as our lives are, you find a place, and if you can't kind of clean your slate a little bit, you might not use that hour very well. So, a lot of times I think, okay, I got this hour coming ahead that I'm going to use. What do I need to do to prepare myself for that hour so that I don't waste it?
Do other folks have questions for Colin?
I think I have the same question as for someone else. How did you manage to all your preferences? Setting software as a specific software for all the references.
So Colin, I think what Ruth is asking about is how did you manage your references? Did you use reference management software like EndNote? Did you use something built into Microsoft and Word? How did you keep track of all of those?
Because I'm at Clemson, we do have, some tools, and we have other, we're around a lot of great people. There's no doubt about it. So, and Clemson is an R1 institution, a lot of research going on at Clemson. So there are a lot of tools. I'll tell you, I was introduced to some tools to help me manage my references. And I just, I ended up using the spreadsheet, and I just tried to organize it that way. And it was just easy, and it helped me kind of get going. Because at the time, really, when I was first getting started, I I had a lot of stuff that was coming at me. I had a lot of things I had to do. And that was one of the things that I did not take enough time to like learn a particular tool. I felt like I had too much research I needed to jump into. I had all these other things that I needed to do. And that didn't feel like something I needed to spend a ton of time, learning about. So I'm pretty good with spreadsheets. So I said, hey, I think I can do this. So I started building them into a spreadsheet, putting links into a particular cell or column, trying to organize it by subject matter, if you will. So, we might put it in, okay, these are how drones are used in applications. Like, here's all the articles that are related to how people use drones. Okay, I can go in there and I can pick that and filter it out. So that helped me a lot, and just using a spreadsheet just to keep me organized. I told you I'm a little bit OCD anyway. So, staying organized is big for me just because my life is sometimes chaotic. Things have to be organized. So do it in a spreadsheet might help.
Yeah, that's a good method to go about it, and something we haven't heard from a lot of authors before, but it's definitely a really practical way for you to be able to manage all of those references.
Now, I did use an online tool to help me get a reference into the appropriate format. So that was helpful, and there's lots of online tools to help you with that. And some of those will even kind of hold those references in there for you. I don't use that exclusively, but the citation engine that I use would kind of help me go back and grab a past article if I needed to. So that was a good help too.
Thanks, Colin. Elena, do you have any questions before I wrap up with one kind of bigger question?
No, I'm good. I'm getting some useful
Okay.
strategies. I'm trying not to talk too much because I have pneumonia.
Oh, oh, well, hang in there, hang in there, hang in
Oh,
there.
sorry, I'm kind of quiet mostly right now.
Well, Colin, I guess we've got two more questions then. One was in the chat from Andy Bell, and he asked if a school doesn't currently have a drone program, what would they do to get started, and what would they need to justify it? And I think this is specifically a drone program that would be at a community or technical college.
Absolutely. The paper talks about, some easier ways to start to build a drone program. Like there's some NIST, the open lane exam. I referenced that a lot in the paper, and it's a pretty intense test, and it takes some resources to do that. It costs a lot of money to build. It takes a lot of space to set that particular course up. Maybe a soccer field or something. So it can be difficult to transport. It can be difficult to store because it's got lots of buckets and things like that. But in the paper, I talk about a smaller set of flight course, if you will, called the BPERP, and it's a easier test to administer. Right, it doesn't take as much space. It doesn't take as much time. It's easier to proctor that particular exam, and also in the paper, I give a recommended multi-tiered flight proficiency certification, almost, if you will. So you can kind of use that, that BPERP with maybe some of the recommendations that are in the paper, to kind of help start to build that program. But there is a need for that program, and for a program like this, and for technical educators. So I'm excited about the paper with respect to that, for sure.
Well then, Colin, to finish up for today, what's in your future? What's coming up for you next? What can we be excited about for you?
Oh, that's fantastic. I think that just, finishing my PhD is going to be just a lifelong milestone for me. I'm so excited for that opportunity. And, I'm working on my dissertation, and this paper had played a huge part in that. I'll never forget it. And I think that, hopefully, as I finish out this year and I finish my PhD program, this is going to also feed into one, really large paper, hopefully, for publication, and hopefully, a lot of that'll come to fruition maybe by the end of the year, maybe the first quarter of even next year.
Well, thanks, Colin. We're all rooting for you, and fingers crossed that everything goes well and that you're able to finish that PhD. It's a really big accomplishment to get that far. So thank you very much for being on the JATE Writers Studio today and for your contribution to technician education.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you so much, Janet. Thank you for having me today. And thanks for everybody, the feedback and questions. I really appreciate it.